Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your Lunch Break Live. My name is Ivana Harinkyu if you are new here, and if you're not, thank you for coming back. Today is Thursday, September the 9th, and we are just a few days away from the 20th commemoration of the terrorist attacks in New York on 9/11. Now, something that is important to remember here before we get started is that a large amount of the U.S. population, about 30%, was either not alive or too young to remember what happened on 9/11. So with that fact in mind, today I am joined by Alabama Education Lab reporter Rebecca Griesbach, and she is here to talk about how teachers are talking and teaching 9/11 in schools. Again, to so many kids who were not alive at the time of 9/11, and even some people who just don't remember what happened on 9/11. Now, Rebecca, you and I were kind of talking before we went live here, and you had told me that you were so young when 9/11 happened, and it kind of hit me that we could have teachers that are so young that they don't have that story everybody seems to of where were you on that day. We have people working in the schools who maybe can teach it, but they don't have the same context and the same personal relationship to people who do remember.
Right. Yeah, I was at Little Friends Daycare in Tuscaloosa and don't remember anything. So yeah, I think that's a real possibility. There are teachers, especially first-year teachers entering the workforce, who don't remember that day.
There's so much to say, and I can't do it justice. I'm not going to try to. But we have some posts on our social media where people have been telling us where they were on that day. And that is something that's always so interesting to read, I think. And so if you have a story like that, feel free to drop them in the comments here. I'd love to read them. So Rebecca, we're going to talk about what's happening in schools. We also, it's important to know though, a lot of this information can be used with parents who maybe have kids at home that aren't in school, or parents maybe who have children that are maybe in their early 20s and again, don't remember what happened. So this is kind of geared towards teachers and how it's being taught in school, but it's applicable in just other senses as well.
Right.
Now, we have something that you said, and we're going to drop the link to your article here, but something you said at the beginning of this article is very interesting to me, and that is that Alabama's social studies standards mention 9/11 just 3 times. Those were 2 times in reference to presidential administrations and once in reference to policy and international affairs. So I think that the average person reading this story, Rebecca, will say, well, 3 times, like that's not very much at all to mention what happened. So can you explain to us exactly what those 3 times entail, and can teachers talk about it more than 3 times?
Right. Teachers can certainly talk about it more than 3 times. We know that schools are doing that. Some of them are holding assemblies. Some of them are having their multiple grade levels do activities related to the day. And right now they might be preparing this week or next week to do some kind of activity centered around the 20th anniversary. As far as the actual standards go, so the first one is in 6th grade, and that seems to align with typical kind of civics. That's when you take your civics class. And that one is, it's in line with sort of lessons explaining how conflict in the Middle East impacted life in the US since World War II. So in class, you have history classes are often defined by periods. So 9/11 being closer to present day, a lot of the times you're not going to breach any kind of subject related to in the past 20, 30 years until maybe the end of the semester or the second semester of a unit. So that I think accounts for maybe why it's only mentioned 3 times and in specific grades. Another time, 9th grade, students are expected to describe the role of nationalism, militarism, civil war, including the use of terrorism and modern weapons at the close of the 20th, beginning of the 21st century. So that's where it's mentioned, specifically that it's September 11th, 2001 date. And then again in 11th grade, when a lot of students are taking either U.S. history from 1950s to present or something along those lines, describes significant foreign and domestic issues of presidential administrations from Richard M. Nixon to the present. So it accounts for that sort of time period aspect that curriculum is often broken into.
So those grades where some of these lessons are taught, again, you said are in 6th, 9th, and 11th grade. So does it mention any standards for those grades, maybe 7th and 8th grade and 12th grade, senior year of high school? But again, I know you said that teachers can still talk about 9/11, especially with the 20th commemoration coming up on Saturday. Friday, that's tomorrow, would be the last school day before that. So what do we know about what some teachers across Alabama or some schools across Alabama are planning to do to mark that date?
We don't know a whole lot, but we do know that some schools have been posting about, never forgetting 9/11. We do know that some students are reading a book called 11, which is a novel, a fictitious novel about a young boy who witnesses, I believe, towers collapse. And it's supposed to mirror the events of 9/11. And so I know one private school in Dothan was announcing that students were looking at that and making comparisons to 9/11. Some teachers, might have other kind of specific activities, but not really aware of anything else or anything that the students are reading as the 20th anniversary comes up.
A comment here from Edward saying, he said, I believe it's difficult to teach children about 9/11 because we tend to not include all history and it can be politicized. And that's probably, fair, Edward. I was not in school when we had to teach that day, since I feel like things have changed so much in the last 20 years. I was at school when that happened. It's interesting to me to even just look personally at how it's being taught and how kids that were my age when 9/11 happened are now learning about it. It's just very interesting. You keeping in with how it's being taught, you spoke with an expert who kind of gave you some guidelines on her thinking about how teachers should deal with a lot of questions they might get about 9/11, about especially attackers who were involved in 9/11, and those types of topics that kids, especially those either who weren't alive or don't remember, are gonna ask because they are curious and because they are kids and that's what they do. So Rebecca, you had kind of an interesting Q&A thing here in your story, but one that I thought was really interesting is a question that you would ask saying, what are some things that teachers should really try to avoid when talking about 9/11? So tell me what you learned from that expert.
Yeah, so I talked to Dr. Amara Dekir. She's a lecturer at American University and does a lot of consulting work around the education space. She surveyed more than 50 students, Muslim students, in the DC area about a broad range of topics, just about their public school experience. And a lot of them mentioned that lessons around 9/11, when done improperly, actually led to more harassment and bullying, specifically toward Muslim students or toward students that their peers might perceive as Muslim. And so a lot of the things that she was saying that teachers should really try to avoid is singling out Muslim students in the classroom to have sort of like unique comments or reactions about 9/11. They should avoid kind of reproducing this narrative that Muslim Americans bear responsibility for what happened on 9/11. One thing she said that was really interesting to me was that they should avoid avoiding it. And I really like that quote because you can't not talk about 9/11. You just have to talk about it responsibly. And it is a difficult topic. So
you're right. That's something that one of our commenters here, Tommy, said, look, you just tell them the truth. And that's fair. You don't avoid it. And that's not what I don't think anybody is saying that you avoid it, but you talk about it responsibly. And I like that word that you just used, Rebecca, because it's something, again, that you quote in this story is when the experts that you interviewed was speaking to American Muslim families, they said that 51% of them, said that their school-age children have experienced anti-Muslim bullying in school. And 1 out of 3 of those incidents involved a teacher or a school official. So you have to be responsible when talking to kids about the situation, about the terrorists that conducted this attack, but also not relating it to any of their Muslim peers or any of their Arab American peers who might even be Christian. But again, kids, you just don't, you don't know somebody's religion by looking at them. So that is just an interesting kind of tidbit in this story that that really pulled out, and that kind of related to a lot of what this expert had to say.
Right. And yeah, I think it's important to point out that, teachers aren't a monolith, obviously. And one thing that she mentioned that was interesting to me was that this isn't just on the teachers to teach culturally responsive or responsible lessons about 9/11. It's kind of a whole school, whole district effort. Principals, superintendents need to be able to support teachers who are teaching about tough topics. And whether that's through just sort of being there and kind of supporting them in that way, or through professional development. A lot of teachers don't typically have access to resources maybe that if they want to kind of branch out from what the standards say or what the school kind of standard curriculum says and the textbooks that they're given. We know that a lot of teachers just nationwide tend to go to Google, Pinterest, Teacher Pay Teachers, these kind of online resources that can be really helpful and for kind of crowdsourcing information, but oftentimes will lead you down a rabbit hole. So providing those resources from reputable sources like the 9/11 Museum and Memorial and from other universities and professors that have been doing this work in this field is also valuable.
And again, especially like we were saying a minute ago, for teachers, so many of our teachers who are young, who are coming out of school and entering the workforce, who don't remember events of 9/11 themselves, it kind of takes that that personal element out of it. And it would be as if maybe you or I were trying to teach about World War II. We can be as knowledgeable as we possibly can be, but there's something different about having that personal experience and that personal effect that makes teaching it a little bit different. I can imagine. I'm not a teacher, but I can imagine that. Now, something else that you had kind of mentioned in this story that goes along with that is this expert said you never know who is in your classroom. You don't know if one of them, their families, has been affected by 9/11. You don't know if somebody in their family died on that day or was involved either with being a first responder or has served in the military as a after effect of 9/11. So I thought that was interesting. What did the experts say about people who maybe have that personal involvement and how teachers should handle that?
Just approach it with empathy. Go in, and I think I liked what she said about leaning into the uncomfortable. Sure, you don't want to single out students who might have triggering experiences around 9/11. So really including the whole classroom in a discussion. And I think it also goes back to having that support of the school and maybe being able to have some more training around 9/11 coverage and teaching would also help with that. Or those are some things that she pointed to as well.
Again, we're going to leave the link to this story here in the comments so you can read it yourself. Just very interesting. And again, very important to keep in mind as we head into, again, today's Thursday, tomorrow's Friday, end of the week, and the 20th marking of 9/11 is on Saturday. So just interesting things to note. Rebecca, I know you will keep us updated if we hear of anything interesting that schools are doing to commemorate the day. And again, we just appreciate it. Everybody, we will have different 9/11 coverage on on our website on AL.com throughout the rest of the week and on Saturday. So stay tuned for that. Rebecca, thank you so much again. Everybody, thank you for watching. And it is important to note that we treat this subject with respect. Please don't argue in the comments about it. This is something that we should all be respectful of. So, Rebecca, thank you. Everybody watching, thank you.